we've talked a little of like people relearning how to be sports fans as they get into a new league and a new genre of a sport they might like. What's driving me crazy with the women's basketball thing, it obviously, we talk more women's basketball on this show than we talk NHL at points. You know, I love all the Caitlin Clark stuff. As Caitlin Clark becomes a star and is discussed regularly on the First Takes and the Sports Centers, as she should be, there's like a lot of gatekeeping about how you can talk about Caitlin Clark. For example, the conversation of should she go pro or stay in college, which happens every year with every star player. Famously, Pete Carroll was saying, oh yeah, Mark Sanchez shouldn't go pro. He's not going to be very good. He should stay in college. When people have an opinion on that, it's like there's like this, how dare you? You don't know whether they'll be better. It's like, yeah, none of us fucking do. That's why we talk about sports like idiots.
Right. Well, it's an interesting discussion. I don't think it's wrong to have the discussion, and you know, asking whether or not it's better for Caitlin Clark to stay in college and be extremely dominant in college, especially with NIL now. Like, I don't think that's a wrong discussion, and I don't think it doesn't have the energy of like telling somebody what to do, but it's wondering whether one might be more lucrative or like capitalizing on like a certain window versus the other.
Yeah,
I think it's a fine discussion to have.
I've seen people ask that question and just truly ask that question and get owned. Like, hey, would Caitlin Clark make more money if she stayed in college? Like, clearly they are saying, I don't know this answer.
And it's not a dumb question.
They're getting fucking smoked for it.
It's not a dumb question because this is the first time that we've like seen this type of situation with NIL, I think, where like you've got a extremely dominant college player who is like, and no offense to the WNBA, but it's like it's not on like the level of like
Caitlin Clark is currently more famous and could theoretically generate a Nike or a whomever more money than a lot of WNBA players. That's factual.
Yeah. What I was going to say is it's not a dumb question at all because Angel Reese, who just declared for the draft during the show, is on record having said before that she wasn't going to go pro because there's more money to be made in college. And now she's going pro, which only proves the point that it's like it's complicated and it's a question that should be asked.
It's weird though. Like, doesn't it though feel like that thing that I've talked about a few times on this, where like, people suddenly don't know how to talk about sports when like the players and the people are different?
It's not. I don't think it's not that people don't know how to talk about sports, but it's like I think now everybody thinks that they're fucking right about everything and that you're not allowed to have like a conversation or a discussion, and you're like taking away someone's agency by asking that question.
That's a fair point. This is the biggest superstar of the Elon Twitter era. So all of us are so brain dead online, and we send the tweet and we make the judgment before we finish the thought, that there is so much like, I tweeted this, I was like, this is like angry and like borderline hateful, the conversations that people are having about Caitlin Clark, which I'll tell you what, Pete, you have to listen to a Caitlin Clark conversation for like an hour before every show every day, because Sean and I are like, yo, Caitlin Clark was even better this most recent game than she was before that one. You know who's the fucking best? Caitlin Clark, which usually you're hearing us say that about Connor McDavid or whatever.
Well, that's a nice little segue, because I asked the question, is there currently a Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese like equivalent in the NHL where Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, personal rivalry, whether or not they like each other off the court, doesn't matter. Personal rivalry that generates so much buzz, and like that individual matchup will probably do better numbers ratings wise than the final. Like, is there a situation in the NHL, whether it's team versus team or player versus player head to head, that would guarantee a ratings bonanza possibly better than the biggest series or game of the year?
It's a great question, because the answer factually is no. Because that game, Caitlin Clark against Angel Reese, blew out so many like massive college football games, NFL games, Thursday night football
It'll probably blow out its own national championship.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, is there any
I don't know.
matchup that's guaranteed to smoke what would typically be seen as the biggest, most must watch game of the year from a competitive
I
standpoint?
think to do that, you have to strip it away piece by piece and say, is there an NHL player with a Caitlin Clark like impact? Selfishly, biasedly, I will say the closest thing is Connor McDavid, because when I watch the Oilers and when I watch Connor McDavid, he, as I've said before, great players in hockey typically look a little better than the rest of the players because it's such a fast game. Connor McDavid is truly the only player I watch, and I say he is so much better than everybody else. When I watch Caitlin Clark against her poor competition, I feel she is so much better than everybody else. You can't take your eyes off her. That exists for Connor McDavid as well. I don't think yet, probably because the Oilers haven't been successful enough, there's a massive foil to the Oilers. As a hockey nerd, I would say
the massive foil to the Oilers is the Oilers.
Yeah. Like, I would say Oilers Golden Knights, I am watching every night like it is LSU against Iowa. But I know in my heart of hearts, there isn't a personality and a talent like Angel Reese that's countering what Connor McDavid and Caitlin Clark bring to the table.
And just the nature of the two sports, like for better or for worse, basketball is a much more individual sport. Whereas if you have like one giant on either side, they're going to be on the floor at the same time most of the game. They have like the head-to-head 1v1 kind of battles that are more rare in hockey because it's more of a team sport. You're spending less time on the ice, shared time, and it's not necessarily always going head to head versus like team versus team.
Somebody suggested maybe back in the day PK Subban and Brad Marchand, but they were too good of friends and they were teammates, and even when they would tussle and everything,
but they didn't like each other.
They were like they were each sides. They were two hated teams at the time, and they were each the face of why everyone hated their team. So they were very important in that regard. But like the biggest thing I'll think about with PK Subban and Brad Marchand is that PK Subban fucked up Brad Marchand like I've never seen anybody else fuck up Brad Marchand. You know about that hip check?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was incredible.
That will go down as one of the greatest. How is that guy still alive? I don't know if people remember this. Brad Marchand played like a couple more games after that and then was out for like a week.
Really?
Because he was like, I gotta. Whoa. That was like one of the most incredible, non-dirty, holy fuck. That guy got rocked. But I don't know, like, do you have, like, maybe if Bedard gets there and we end up getting some Western Conference finals, but even then you need like the seeding. Actually, that's not true because this was Elite Eight. But you'd need some big series of Connor versus Connor.
There really hasn't been personal individual rivalries much in the NHL recently. Like the last one that really fucking moved the needle for me personally was Drew Doughty versus Matthew Tkachuk. Like Drew Doughty hates Matthew Tkachuk's guts, and Matthew Tkachuk made his life hell every time they were out there. And like that season where Tkachuk hurt Doughty, like every time they met was must-see TV. And before that, like obviously Ovi and Crosby were great.
If we go back to Subban and Marchand, we get to go back to Ovechkin and Crosby.
Right, of course. But even then, that wasn't them two kind of clashing. It was their teams clashing and them leading their teams, and they just kind of frequently met in the playoffs.
Well, but that's the thing about Caitlin Clark. Like the one thing about this is I feel like the media plays such a role in it, and hockey media is not going to do that the way basketball media does. Because like we talked about this the other day, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese don't guard each other. Like they don't play each other on the court. The rivalry is almost entirely manufactured. They both said that they like each other. Obviously, their teams have met on very high stakes circumstances on 2 occasions now.
But they do shit talk each other.
Not really. Like,
Oh no,
Don't
Caitlin
they?
Clark.
They
Caitlin
shit-
Clark's a bit of an asshole, and I
mean,
Yeah.
but they
hate
don't
that.
shit talk each other. Like Caitlin Clark, she hits a big three, she's screaming. But again, Angel Reese is like on the other side of the court. They're not
Yeah.
even near each other. Like,
But
they
last year, Angel Reese did give it back to Caitlin Clark.
yeah, but Angel
which-
Reese does that to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like a thing between them. It's almost entirely manufactured, and the NHL media doesn't do that. And then, like you said, I think the game is just too different. The game is too fluid.
But
Like,
rivalries, like heated, like personal rivalries do exist in hockey and have existed in hockey.
but in order for it to have the impact that this
they have to be
the
unbelievable
media
players.
has to care about it, and the media is not going to treat any rivalries in hockey the same way, because like A, it's a basketball thing, and B, like the fact of the matter is race plays an incredible part in this rivalry. Like that's why
That's
that's
true.
part of why it's so like trumped up, and obviously it's much less likely to happen in hockey for obvious reasons.
And in hockey, you're like if we're making the comparison to hockey, like it has to happen between two players and individuals that individually move the needle themselves.
Right.
Like Angel Reese
Yes.
moves the needle alone. Caitlin
Yes.
Clark obviously moves the needle alone. Nobody's going to give a fuck about like a Brad Marsh and Ryan Reeves rivalry because they'll just be like, one of these guys is just out there to cause problems.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up race though, because I was gonna say culturally there's something with the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark
Yeah.
thing that just doesn't exist with, mainly because the players that we're talking about have been around and known for a while. I did not know who Caitlin Clark was until the year
That's the other thing.
2023, and I was probably a little late.
Yeah.
Once I saw her, I was like, I'm watching every game from now on, and this hit like North America, and suddenly it's
Yeah.
like, hey, this is your like 1975 thing, like we're your new favorite band.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the other thing.
It shows up, and it is the best thing.
It's just so new too that like people are like, oh shit, I didn't. And for better or worse, people are like, I didn't realize the women got down like this. This is awesome. Whereas like guys hating each other in hockey, like it's hockey, of course. Like that happens. I think there's a lot of people who are like, I didn't realize that the women acted like this. This is awesome.
We all silly like the mayor.